Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
I always say I'm ready, and then I'm like, did I adjust my mic? Did I move things over? Did I do any of those things? No, I did not. I was just like, yeah, I'm
I didn't
ready.
do
And then I was like,
anything.
well, I was kind of like halfway ready. Whoops. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess we should probably put in like the show notes that this will be a three-parter, just so you don't,
hmm
if you're the kind of person who likes to listen to all parts at once, this will be a three-parter episode. We do have both all parts available on
hmm
patreon.com/caffeinated crimes if you are hearing this from our regular feed and you want to go on over there for like $3 a month and then you can listen to all parts immediately.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is a lot. I told you guys it was coming. We said it was coming, and it's finally here. It's finally ready. Hopefully, it is mostly coherent because
Yes.
a lot of shit, a lot of shit to go through. Um, but yeah. Do we have any like bantery things?
I had a quick question. Sorry, I want to start with that off the top just in case I don't want people to get like 10
I'm
minutes
gonna
in
be
and then be
like,
like,
save it.
damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I need to know for those of you who have children or have like children in your lives who have like been in your lives since the day they were born and like you've had tattoos the entire time, uh, do they still like randomly notice new ones on your body? Because my daughter will just like suddenly ask about like different tattoos on my body that I'm like, we have lived together for over 3 years and I spent all day every day with you. I know you like the one on my shoulder. I have a dog paw print on my shoulder, and tonight she goes, "Do you have a bear print on your shoulder?" It's like, have you never noticed this before? And then I have a Batman tattoo on my back, and she's like, "What's this one?" Like, where have you been? I just
Yeah.
so I'm like, is it something that's just like been a part of my body to her for so long that she doesn't like think about
She's
the fact that
now
it's
like
a
pointing
thing?
out, like picking out different things.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like when you were here last week and she was like pointed out like our matching tattoos, and so then we had to show her all three of them. But
Yeah.
like little things like that I'm just like, you've seen this before. Like you have seen me all of my tattoos.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to get others' thoughts and opinions on that. If
Yeah.
this is a normal thing or if my child is just very oblivious to the world.
Yeah. Could be a combination. You never know.
That is very
Um,
true.
Speaking of her seeing our matching tattoos, I have to tell my funny Kevin story. Um, and that's that I wore my Titanic shirt over to Jacqueline's house, and Millie was like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's a movie called Titanic." And she was like, "Oh, I haven't seen that one." And I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to wait until you're older, but once you're old enough, like
Hmm.
once Mama says you're good, like we'll watch it." And so I was telling Kevin about it, and he was like, "Yeah," he was like, "Guess it's a little too mature for her, like the boobs." And I was like, or the people dying, the mass casualty is more so what I was thinking of.
Oh my
Like
God, that was so
when
funny.
that guy jumps off the boat and hits the propeller.
Yes, right. I told Andrew that story and he was like, just like the hours of like impending doom. Like, forgot about that part of the movie.
Yeah, which I also told this story at like a friend's dinner, and our other
Uh-huh.
friend goes, I was also thinking about the boobs. I was thinking the boobs. I think that was what you meant. Because Kevin was like, to me, it's just like a romance. And it's like, oh,
Oh gosh,
whatever.
that's
I
so funny.
forgot that people died.
Which is
Uh,
also funny because like she was breastfed for a long time. She's seen plenty of boob in her
she's seen
life.
plenty of boobs. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I think she's fine.
Oh man. That was very funny though. But yeah, so now that we had something a little lighthearted to start this
Yeah.
episode with, let's dive into this three-parter. You're
Yes,
welcome.
and we're going to spend the next 5 minutes reading sources. Not really, but there's quite a few of them. So
Just a couple.
just a couple. So our sources were The Run of His Life, The People versus O.J. Simpson by Jeffrey Toobin. His Name is Ron, Our Search for Justice by the family of Ron Goldman. Grave Secrets, a leading forensic expert reveals the startling truth about O.J. Simpson, David Koresh, whatever, Vincent Foster, and other sensational cases by Cyril Wetch. Sorry, don't know. The Truth About the O.J. Simpson Trial by F. Lee Bailey, and Without a Doubt by Marcia Clark and Teresa Carpenter. Also forgot, I also read If I Did It by O.J. Simpson slash the Goldman family. I think those are the only books I read. Only
Only just those 27
just
books
those.
Courtney's read over the last, when did he die? It's been 3 months.
Yeah. I know way too much about OJ. And now here are all the sources. We have a few New York Times articles, biography.com, a few people.com articles, E Online, ABC News, AP News, um, a Tuco website, I'm not sure, the Seattle Times, and WPTV. So all those a lot of articles. So, the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman became nationwide news in 1994 because of the accused murderer, O.J. Simpson. The trial was aired on TV, and the nation watched closely as the trial of the century began. But two people who are often forgot about in this case is the victims themselves, and for that reason, we're going to talk about them first. So, in case you decide not to listen to all three parts, you at least know about the victims. Ronald Lyle Goldman was born to Fred and Sharon Goldman in Chicago, and they also had another daughter, Kim. So Ron adored Kim from the moment she was born, and then Fred and Sharon got divorced when Ron was 5, and Fred ended up gaining full custody, and Sharon slowly drifted from their lives. So she, after this point, wasn't really involved too much in their lives at all. So Kim and Ron developed a special bond through all this, and Ron always made sure to sit with Kim on the bus and make sure she got home. And Ron and Kim would actually make dinner for Fred for when he got home. Again, he's a single dad, so they're just kind of helping him any way they can. And they would also approve or disapprove of his dates that he would go on. So they had to get the kids' approval. Fred did get married to a woman named Joan. However, Joan didn't feel that she was ever able to break in and be a part of the family. Like the three of them had such a close, tight-knit bond. She kind of always just felt like an outsider. So they eventually got divorced. Fred then met Patty Glass. She had 3 kids, Brian, Michael, and Lauren. And after their first date, they were inseparable. The kids did not spend much time together until after Patty's father had a heart attack, and Brian, Michael, and Lauren had a babysitter, and Lauren thought that the babysitter was like being mean to her. So they called Kim and Ron. And so Kim and Ron actually came over, fired the babysitter, and then brought the 3 kids home with them. So
They're like,
they
I'll just
came in
take
and were
care of this.
you ain't gonna be mean to her. You're fired. Leave. Um, and
That's so
then
funny.
yeah, I loved that story. And then after that, the 5 of them really became close and kind of like a sibling relationship. And Ron was a skinny, gawky teenager, but he was popular. He loved to dance and joke around, and he was carefree and made friends easily. He was a kind and gentle soul. He also had a magnetic personality and liveliness about him. And he grew up into a handsome young man who had big dreams. One of his dreams was also about opening a restaurant in LA. So that was one of his big dreams. And they actually found a few journal entries of some ideas he'd been putting down about opening a restaurant. So he was raised in Buffalo Grove, where he met his best friend, Mike Pincus, and they grew up together. And Ron was also described as the class clown, just kind of, again, this magnetic personality and just like. So Ron and Mike were always getting into trouble. And Ron went to Adlai Stevenson High School and played soccer and tennis, and he graduated in 1986. He then went to Illinois State University briefly and then dropped out after a year. And Fred actually got a new job in California. And so Patty and Fred officially married on February 21st, 1987. And then Fred, Patty, and the 5 kids all got on the plane to go out to California. So Ron then was talking to Mike and like begging him to come with him. And Mike said no at first, but eventually Ron persuaded him, and Mike arrived in July 1989. Ron introduced Mike to a woman named Lisa, and Mike and Lisa eventually got married and were actually expecting their first kid in 1994. So he was a little bit of a matchmaker there. And back to 1987, when they moved to California, Ron enrolled at Pierce Junior College. He did not succeed and decided to drop out, and Ron got a job at a tanning salon and a job as a camp counselor for inner city minority children who came from tough home situations. And Ron loved this job because he loved like working with the kids. He kind of gave him like a sense of purpose. Like he just really, really enjoyed, working with them. And Ron soon would bounce in and out of school and in and out of jobs, just trying to find his job, his purpose, what he enjoyed doing. Ron had never really expressed interest in being an actor. He did go on a show called Studs as a dare, which was basically a low budget version of the dating game. So the show was supposed to pay for 3 dates with 3 different women, but Ron actually ended up chipping in some of his own money because he was like, they did not give enough money to like take these women on appropriate date.
I'll take them on a
So
proper date here.
yeah. So Kim actually threw a watch party for some of her friends when it aired, and Ron was just enjoying being young and free, like just going on a dating show on a dare, like, you know. But he was getting ready to kind of settle down. He wanted to start his own business, maybe find someone and get married. And in 1994, he was working as a waiter at Mezzaluna. So Nicole Brown was born in Frankfurt, Germany on May 19th, 1959. Um, and she was born to Juditha and Louis Brown. I'm not sure. I didn't look it up. He went by Lou, so we'll call him Lou from now on. But um, Juditha was born on January 21st, 1931 in Stuttgart, Germany. And Lou Brown was born on August 10th, 1923, in Wichita, Kansas. Lou had enrolled in a business college in Texas, and he left early to join the Army Air Force during World War II. And then, following World War II, he continued to be with the Air Force overseas, and he was doing flying photo missions in Europe when he met Juditha in Rollwald. Sorry, Germany. Apologies.
Doing our best
So,
over here.
we're just trying to survive here, okay? So they got married in Switzerland, and the couple initially lived in Frankfurt with their 2 girls, Nicole and her older sister Denise. And at this time, Lou worked at an American military newspaper called Stars and Stripes. And Lou had been married before, and he had 4 children: Wendy, Tracy, Rolf, and Margaret. So Nicole had these half siblings as well. And when Nicole and Denise were toddlers, the family decided to move to Garden Grove, California. And the Browns also had 2 more daughters, Dominique and Tanya. And when the girls were hitting high school age, the family moved to Monarch Beach and Dana Point. And Nicole adjusted quickly to California life and loved it. She was blonde and beautiful. She loved spending time on the beach. She was also named Homecoming Princess at Dana Hills High School. And a teacher described her as always happy and bubbly. She was always smiling. And they said it seems like she was just eager to like start on her life after high school. Like she was ready to like go out in the world and like start her life. So by 18, Nicole began working as a waitress at the Daisy, which is an upscale club in California's Beverly Hills. And she had been working at a clothing boutique 2 weeks before starting there. And while working here, she met O.J. Simpson. O.J. was married at the time and in the final years of his football career, and the two fell for each other quickly and started dating fast. Nicole enrolled at Saddleback College in Mission Viejo in 1977. And a few months after this, she did move in with OJ and dropped out. And she would later say she dropped out because OJ insisted that she be with him, like that she couldn't attend her classes because he was like, you need to be with me like at all times if I need to fly somewhere. And since Nicole got with OJ so young, her life past 18 features OJ heavily. So now we're going to go back and talk about OJ Simpson. So you're getting a lot of bios right here, but
All the background info
all
for
the
you.
background. We gotta do this chronologically or I get lost.
There's a lot to cover.
Yeah. So, Orenthal James Simpson was born on July 7th, 1947, in San Francisco, and he was the third of four children to James and Eunice Simpson. Shortly after his birth, his parents noticed something wrong with his legs, and the doctor actually diagnosed him with rickets, which is like a vitamin D deficiency that weakens and disturbs the growth of bones. So the doctors actually wanted to break his legs and reset them with braces. And this is again what, like 1950s, 1940s, 50s doctors, who knows how that would have
Wow.
gone.
Yeah.
Um, However, the Simpsons could not afford that surgery and they opted for a homemade brace with special shoes. And he did end up kind of bow-legged because of this. His legs were very thin, and a lot of his friends called him pencil pins because his legs were so thin. However, OJ soon started to get into athletics and could run just as fast as the other kids. And he soon started going by OJ because he really was not a fan of the name Orenthal. His father was in and out of his life, and his father, James, did die in 1985 from AIDS. And Eunice worked nights as an orderly and a technician in San Francisco General Hospital and supported the family the best she could. So OJ was a little bit of a troublemaker as a child. He would frequently steal and get into fights. I don't think he really grew out of that, but
Well, this really sets the stage for where we're going in these next three episodes.
hmm Um, so he said himself that football saved him and put him on the right path. And when OJ was a sophomore in 1962 in high school, he was getting in trouble when Willie Mays, who's a legendary San Francisco Giants center fielder, decided to meet up with OJ. He'd heard about his athletic ability, but also his troublemaking, and he wanted to help him. And this helped OJ see what his life would be if he focused. He was like, here is another, you know, Black man who is successful. I can be successful. Like, I just need to get my shit together. Which also, from the time OJ died to making this episode, Willie Mays also died. So rest in peace, Willie Mays.
Hmm.
So he became extremely devoted to athletics, especially football, and OJ's high school, Galileo High, had never been known for its sports teams, but that changed OJ's senior year, and the football team soon started winning, thanks to OJ, and this got the attention of USC.
So after high school, OJ played football and ran track at City College of San Francisco, but he did have his sights set on the University of Southern California, or USC. In 1967, OJ finally made it to USC and was a celebrity at the school. He quickly established himself as the best running back in the school's history at the time. They won the Rose Bowl that year. His senior year, they lost the Rose Bowl, but he won the Heisman Trophy. So if you're not familiar, the Heisman Trophy is awarded to the most outstanding player in all of college football. So it's this huge honor, the award that like most college football players strive for. So you have the Rose Bowl and the Heisman Trophy back to back years. Like things are happening for you.
Yeah, that's a pretty big thing.
Yeah. OJ's number 32 was retired at USC at the end of his time there, and OJ was the number one overall pick in the NFL draft and was drafted by the Buffalo Bills. Before he had ever even played his first professional football game, he had advertisement deals with Chevrolet, Royal Crown Cola, and a broadcasting deal with ABC. His football career with the Bills did take a slow start. He didn't really perform that well his first year. He was out most of the second year with an injury, and the third year, the Bills only won one game. So after this, the owner fired the coach and decided to rework the team to base it around OJ and his running abilities. And in 1972, that was the first year under this new structure. OJ had 1,251 yards, and his career just really launched from there. In 1973, he rushed for over 2,000 yards, 2,003 to be exact, which for even today's numbers is very high.
Mhm.
Only 8 rushers have ever done that before, and he was the first. He retired in 1979, and football was very tough on his body, as I'm sure it is for many professional football players.
Yeah, because I was looking it up because I was like, I don't even think that's common today to rush for
Yeah,
2,000 yards. And Kevin was like,
yeah,
no,
yeah,
nope.
that's
And
a
I was
lot.
like, wild.
Yeah. So OJ married his first wife, Marguerite, in 1967, and they had 3 children, Arnell, Jason, and Aaron. Are those all pronounced correctly as far as I know? Okay. And OJ had his eyes set on Brentwood. So the Brentwood neighborhood is like the wealthy part of West Los Angeles. It's at the heart of Sunset Boulevard, just like these very big houses. And on February 23rd, 1977, OJ Simpson bought a house at 360 North Rockingham for $650,000, which in today's money would be 3.35 million. Which even for that million, I was like, that seems low for like what housing would cost
I know.
today. Like
Yeah.
even like the
It's
normal
like
inflation equivalent, it's like that same house today cannot even imagine what that would go for. I'm sure you could find that easily, but
I should have looked up like a house for sale in Brentwood today and done
yeah.
that, but I didn't think about that.
Well, you can do that on your own time. You guys are, you can Google away while you're listening. Just,
Yeah.
keep listening. So the house was on a corner lot with 6,000 square feet with a pool and a tennis court, and it did have a 6-foot brick wall that protected the house's privacy. So shortly after he bought this house is when he began seeing 18-year-old Nicole Brown and separated from his then wife, Marguerite. So they officially divorced in March of 1979, and OJ was 30 years old at the time and at the end of his professional football career. This same year, OJ's almost 2-year-old daughter, Erin, accidentally drowned in the pool at Rockingham. She was walking around the backyard and fell in the pool, and the family found her shortly after, but she was unconscious. They called 911, and EMTs were able to perform CPR and revive her, and she was rushed to the University of California Medical Center, but she was in a coma and on life support, and a few days later, she died of respiratory failure just a few days before her second birthday, which is just
So
absolutely
sad.
horrific.
So
Yeah.
tragic. Just like walking around in her backyard and accidentally falls in. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it can happen so quickly and so easily.
Just your friendly reminder to always have a pool fence, an alarm, and all of those things if you have a
Yeah.
pool and children. Um, Nicole had moved in with OJ before his divorce to Marguerite was finalized, and Nicole really fit in well with OJ's friends. She met Robert and Kris Kardashian. Kris said she loved her from the moment she met her. She like knew they'd be best friends. OJ was a groomsman in the Kardashians' wedding, and the four vacationed together in Aspen in 1980. Nicole and OJ got married on February 2nd, 1985, in the backyard at the Rockingham house. Nicole was pregnant with their first child, Sydney, and Sydney was born in October of 1985, and their son Justin was born in August of 1988. After OJ retired, he had a lot of broadcasting, acting roles, and investments, and would make about $1 million a year at that time in the late 80s.
Hmm.
And he also became the spokesperson for Hertz and was a commentator for NFL games, and he even landed acting roles in The Towering Inferno and the Naked Gun series. Nicole and OJ frequently hosted parties at their house for holidays and remained close with Nicole's parents. However, a lot of friends said Nicole wasn't really able to like be herself or get too close to anyone else. And a lot of friends said OJ was very controlling, like they were very rarely separate. They said they seemed happy, but that they would also have like very intense fights. But most friends say they did not think it was physically abusive or as bad as it was until much later. On January 1st, 1989, a 911 call came from the Rockingham house, and when the dispatcher answered, there was at first no one there, but then she heard someone being hit and screaming, so she rated the call as a code 2 high, which indicated an immediate police response. The housekeeper answered the call from the gate and said there was no issue, they could leave, but police said they would not leave until they spoke with the woman who called. So Nicole eventually came out and told the officers that OJ was going to kill her, that he had lots of guns, her lip was cut and bleeding, and she had a black eye on her left eye. She had a bruise on her forehead and around her neck that looked like the imprint of a human hand, and Nicole agreed to make a report against OJ. OJ eventually came out and said he didn't hit her, that he just pushed her out of the bed. And police had been called multiple times to the house, but this time they indicated that they were going to arrest him. And the housekeeper tried to beg Nicole to go back inside and drop the matter. And once the officer turned to brief another officer on the situation, OJ took off in his Bentley off of the property. So it's like, just gonna get out of here, I guess. So Nicole said the fight started because OJ was letting two other women stay in the house and had sex with one of them earlier in the day. And OJ told police it was just a drunken fight and a quote mutual type wrestling match.
Okay.
Um, I mean, you are professional fucking athlete, but okay.
Yeah, you were much taller and larger than her, but
Yes,
okay, mutual.
exactly. So Nicole came into the police station the next day and tried to minimize the situation. She said she didn't want to go through with like a full-fledged prosecution, and they were able to resolve the case with an informal mediation. So OJ had made friends with many of the officers and would often host them in his house. And while there had been numerous calls to Rockingham to stop OJ from hurting Nicole, no officers would admit to responding there. Only one would admit to responding and offer to make an official statement. So that officer was Mark Furman. And on January 30th, the attorney's office decided to proceed with charges despite Nicole wanting to just resolve it quietly. So OJ eventually pled no contest, which is basically a guilty plea, but like sounds a little better. Sounds like you're a little less admitting to what you did.
I guess I just won't fight it.
Yeah, exactly. So because of this, on May 24th, 1989, he received a suspended sentence, 24 months of probation, and fines totaling $470, which would be about $1,200 today. He also had to do 120 hours of community service and receive counseling twice a week. So OJ and Nicole did separate in February of 1992, and it was pretty clear that OJ would keep the house. So Nicole and her two kids moved into a house nearby at 325 Gretna Greenway, also in Brentwood. And Nicole had signed a prenup. So in court, she pressed for child and spousal support. She did not have a job at the time as she was caring for two young children. Her job experience was very limited. I mean, she got with OJ pretty young and was married to a very wealthy person, so she didn't really have much of a need for a job. And as we mentioned earlier, he also encouraged her to drop out of college to be with him, like whenever he was traveling for his career. Like she, put her professional aspirations to the side to be with him. So she is obviously asking for money to support
Hmm.
her life and her children.
Yeah. And friends of Nicole said after the separation that she was really starting to become herself again. She loved being a mom and taking care of her kids full time. She was reconnecting with friends and seemed happier and lighter. Nicole started going to therapy, both with friends and on her own. However, Nicole did soon start to want to be back with OJ and reached out to him. I think we can see this a lot, even when you kind of sometimes leave a relationship, especially when you have kids, like you guys keep trying to kind of rekindle it. Uh, and Nicole was also hoping to get into the business world and even talked about opening a coffee house in Brentwood with her friend Faye Resnick. And OJ and Nicole's divorce was settled without a trial, so even though she's thinking about being back with him, they did go ahead and finalize their divorce. On October 15th, 1992, both agreed that OJ would pay $55,000 a month, which is about $283,000 in today's money. So that means he's making enough post NFL career to afford that a month.
Right?
Um,
Wow.
he would also pay Nicole $10,000 a month in child support, which is about $51,000 today. And Nicole also got to keep the title to a rent producing condo in San Francisco. And OJ also agreed to a one-time payment of $433,750, which is about 2.2 million today. So he's having to pay a lot in this divorce, but he is
Hmm.
also wealthy and prevented her from ever having a career, so
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
This amount was also intended to help Nicole purchase a residence. Nicole eventually sold the condo in San Francisco, and to avoid taxes on the sale, she would need to invest the proceeds in another rent producing property. Don't ask me more about this. I don't understand it. Don't know.
We are
Um,
not real estate tax
no.
people.
We are not wealthy enough to have investment properties and understand how to get out of the taxes on a sale with another investment property.
Yeah, we're in
It's not
very
us.
different tax brackets. That's not the life we live over here.
Yeah. So Nicole eventually bought a condo at 875 South Bundy for $655,000, which is about 3.4 million today. So quite a bit. Nicole loved it and because it was close to a school and a playground. On October 25th, 1993, Nicole made another phone call to 911 asking for help and saying OJ was going to beat the shit out of her. The 911 dispatcher could hear OJ yelling in the background and talking about a sexual relationship she had with a boyfriend after the divorce. So he's like, yelling these things at her, all of that. But even with this going on, Nicole joined OJ for the Dolphins Cowboys Thanksgiving game, and they also spent Christmas together. So even though these 911 calls are kind of still happening, she is also still spending time with him. Again, we can see that a lot in abusive relationships. So she moved into the Bundy house in January 1994, and around this time as well, there was tension between her and OJ, especially around finances. And a lot of the conflict revolved around Cato Caitlin. So Cato had been renting the guest house at her Gretna greenhouse for $500 a month, and he could sometimes reduce that amount in exchange for babysitting Sydney and Justin. So, like, if you come watch my kids, I'll reduce your rent. Mutual help each other out here. And Sydney and Justin loved Cato, and they even named their dog after him. They named it like Aylin or something like that. Like they loved Cato. So, I mean, it was a very good like relationship all around.
Hmm.
But when Nicole moved to the Bundy condo, they planned to continue the deal, and he would pay to stay in a small guest suite between the garage and the kitchen. So OJ was very upset about this and told Cato he didn't like him staying under the same roof as Nicole, and OJ told him he could live rent free at his guest house at the Rockingham house. So
Oh.
this, friend she had who was, helping her by renting it and babysitting for her is now taken away from by OJ. And in March 1994, OJ, Nicole, Sydney, Justin, and OJ's older kids, Arnell and Jason, went to the premiere of Naked Gun 33 and a Third, The Final Insult. Also in March, OJ, Nicole, and their kids went on vacation in Mexico with Chris and her new husband, Caitlyn Jenner, and kids Courtney, Kim, Chloe, and Rob Kardashian. So, you know, they're going on vacation together here. And in early May, OJ gave Nicole a bracelet with diamonds, rubies, and sapphires, and Nicole would give it back a week later. In the end of May 1994, OJ and Nicole's final attempt at a reconciliation ended in a large fight over money. OJ was threatening to report her to the IRS because when Nicole bought the Bundy house, she said it would be a rental property to avoid the taxes from the San Francisco condo. And she kept her primary residence as the Rockingham house. So she was saying the Bundy house was a rental, even though she was living in it, and put OJ's address as her address. And in a diary entry from June 3rd, she wrote, quote, "You hang up on me last night. You're going to pay for this bitch. You're holding money from the IRS. You're going to go to jail, you fucking cunt. You think you can do anything you want. You've got it coming. I've already talked to my lawyers about this bitch. They'll get you for tax evasion, bitch. I'll see to it. You're not going to have a dime left, bitch, etc." So she kind of wrote down what OJ was saying to her. So
Hmm.
obviously a big fight.
Yeah.
And on June 6th, OJ delivered on his threat and wrote a formal letter saying she no longer had permission to use the Rockingham house as her residence or mailing address. And the next day, Nicole called the Sojourn Shelter for Battered Women in Santa Monica to report that she was being stalked by OJ. And on June 3rd, Nicole put the Bundy house up for rent, asking $4,800 a month. And if Nicole had to pay back taxes on the house because of not using it as like a rental property, it would be about $90,000, which is about $463,000 today. And that was almost all the money like she had left, basically, after everything. So it would just be easier for her to find somewhere else for her and her kids to stay. On Friday, June 10th, Nicole spoke with her friend Ron Hardy and said she was going to look at houses with her realtor. Ron Hardy said she sounded happy and ready to put OJ behind her. And Nicole made dinner plans with Hardy for Monday night. Her realtor said they found a nice home in Malibu with a pool and a view that would be perfect. So, very nice. And Nicole was antsy for the for lease sign to go up because of this whole back taxes issue. She doesn't want things to go bad. And she was planning to do it on June 13th. And OJ had actually started dating model Paula Barbary. Don't know if that's pronounced right. And was seen at an event with her on June 11th. So from their reconciliation, OJ moved on quite fast. On June 12th, Nicole got up early to make breakfast for the kids, and later that afternoon, she went with her parents and siblings to Sydney's dance recital. And afterward, they went to dinner at Mezzaluna in Brentwood. OJ had been invited to the recital, but not the dinner after. And the Browns left around 8:30 p.m. And shortly after 9 p.m., OJ had called Nicole, and Faye Resnick also called Nicole around that time. And at 9:40 p.m., Juditha called Nicole and said she left her sunglasses at Mezzaluna. So Nicole called the restaurant, and Ron Goldman said he would return them to her. So this is where sources kind of differ. So some sources say Ron and Nicole were friends, and that like Ron had even like previously borrowed Nicole's car, like to that point of being friends. And some sources say he was just doing a nice favor because he lived close to where she like was and where she lived, and like his family was like he was a very nice person. Like he would have done that for someone if it was not too far out of his way. Um, and there were also rumors that they were in a relationship. That is not true. So I think we'll talk about that later. But that's kind of where some sources differ of like Ron was her friend bringing the glasses. Ron was just a nice stranger bringing the glasses.
Hmm.
Either way, he left the restaurant at 9:50 p.m. and told a coworker he was going to drop the glasses off, then meet up with some friends in Marina del Rey. And on the night of June 12th, 1994, Pablo Vinicius, sorry guys, this is all these names are all written, not
Yeah.
pronounced. Um, was watching the news with his wife, and they lived 60 yards north of Nicole's Bundy condo. And around 10:15, Pablo and his wife both heard a dog barking. And around 11 p.m., the dog has not stopped barking, and it would be Nicole's dog, Akita, who was howling. Akita, that was the dog's name. I was wrong.
You're close.
Oopsie, that was close. Other neighbors also heard Akita barking and howling after 10:15 p.m. And another neighbor, Stephen Schwab, took his dog out for a walk at 10:30 p.m. He took a very similar route each time. And at 10:55 p.m., he passed Nicole's condo and saw Akita like barking at a house, basically. He didn't know it was Akita at the time and thought it was just like a lost dog. And he didn't know who the dog belonged to, so he kept walking towards home and the dog followed him. And he told his wife Linda about it and like they gave the dog some water. So Akita just like follows him home. And they're like, "Oh, lost dog, don't really know kind of what's going on here." And another neighbor, Sakru Bosteep, and his wife Betna Rasmussen also came out and they were talking at around 11:40 p.m. And Sakru agreed that they would take the dog in for the night, but then the dog started like acting nervous. So they let the dog out and like let the dog lead them. They were like, "Something's going on, like you take us to where you think we need to go," basically. So Akita took them towards Bundy Drive, and just after midnight, they came up to the gate for 875 Bundy Drive, and it was very dark. And they looked down the pathway and saw a lady laying in blood. And so they were like, "Oh, we need to leave." And the crime scene was officially reported at 12:13 a.m., and a police arrived quickly. So Nicole was lying at the base of four stairs that led up to a landing and the front door, and the pool of blood around her was bigger than she was. Blood also covered much of the walkway leading to the stairs and a path that was bordered on both sides. She was only 35 years old. An officer pointed his flashlight to the right and saw another body, and it was a muscular young man with his shirt pulled over his head, and he was identified as 25-year-old Ronald Goldman. Ron was slumped against the metal fence that separated 875 Bundy from the property next door. And near his feet, there were three items: a black hat, a white envelope stained with blood, and a single leather glove. And next to Nicole, there was a single fresh heel print in the blood, like next to her body. But there were no like bloody footprints coming out the front gate onto the sidewalk.
Officer Robert Risk tiptoed through the bushes, trying to not disturb the scene. He saw a set of bloody footprints on the walkway on the other side of the property. So the killer seemed to have left out the back of the property. And there were also drops of blood to the left of the shoe prints, possibly indicating that the killer had been bleeding from the left hand. The front door to Nicole's condo was open. Risk walked in and saw nothing out of place, like no signs of ransacking or theft. There were candles in the living room. Um, Risk also Risk also went upstairs and saw there were lighted candles in the main bedroom and bathroom, and Sydney and Justin were also asleep in their bedrooms. So Risk was a lower level officer, and his role was to identify the dead, close off the scene, and call in investigators. As he went to summon investigators, he saw a letter on the front hall table, and the return address indicated it was from O.J. Simpson. So Risk also looked around and saw pictures of O.J. in the family photos, and he decided to call for help on the phone versus the radio because a lot of reporters would monitor police radios, and he didn't want to announce a double homicide related to a celebrity over that broadcast for everyone to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously, at this point, Risk has just kind of trampled through the crime scene instead of immediately calling for backup when he could obviously tell that there was a homicide. However, the LAPD doesn't have a great track record, especially not during these times. Um, in 1992, a passerby videotaped LAPD officers beating unarmed motorist Rodney King, and on April 30th, 1992, the four officers who administered the beating were acquitted in a trial that had been moved from downtown LA to Simi Valley, that was a very predominantly white area, and a lot of riots erupted in LA due to this. So it was a very tumultuous time for everyone
Yes.
involved with LAPD.
A little bit.
So at 12:30 a.m., Risk called in the double homicide to his supervisor, David Rossi. So Rossi made a lot of phone calls due to the possible notoriety of this case, and a steady stream of officers started showing up to the Bundy condo. Sergeant Marty Kuhn was the first supervisor to arrive, and Risk and his partner put up yellow tape, and officers stood by to make sure no one passed in. And David Rossi didn't get to the scene until 1:30 a.m. And Rossi reached out to the chief of the West LA Detective Homicide Unit that would be in charge, Ron Phillips. And Phillips' on-call detective was Mark Furman, who would be assisted by Brad Roberts. So Phillips called Furman and Roberts to meet at the West LA station, and they took an unmarked police car and arrived at the scene at 2:10 a.m. Risk took Phillips and Furman on a tour of the scene, and instead of tiptoeing past the scene like Risk did, they went around the back via Dorothy Street to see the rest of the scene in the back. So they entered the house through the garage, passing a black Jeep Cherokee and a white Ferrari, and walked up a short flight of stairs. On the banister next to the stairs was a partially eaten cup of Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So Phillips wanted to inform OJ of the murder in person, and since it was his ex-wife, they would need to interview him anyway. And at this time, they also didn't know the identity of the man at the scene, so they thought that he might be able to help identify him. And of course, there's also the matter of the children who are sleeping upstairs, and someone's going to need to pick them up now from the police station. So four detectives made their way to OJ's house. Furman said he knew where OJ lived because he had previously responded there to a domestic dispute. But Risk had run the plates on the Jeep in the garage, and the address came back to 360 North Rockingham. So around 5 a.m., Phillips, Furman, and two other detectives went to OJ's house. They rang the buzzer at the house, but there was no response. But they were able to obtain OJ's home phone number, and at 5:36 a.m., Phillips tried calling, but it kept going to voicemail. So the four officers hung around trying to get a hold of OJ. Furman was a lower-ranking officer, so he looked around while the officers were trying to call him, and he shined his flashlight into the Bronco and saw papers addressed to OJ Simpson. Furman then studied the driver's door and noticed a small red stain above the handle. Near the bottom of the door, he saw several more thin red stripes, so Furman called over a senior detective who agreed that the stripes looked like blood. They ran the license plate on the Bronco, and the plate came back to Hertz Corporation. If you'll remember from the beginning, Simpson had endorsed them for a long time, and the detectives are now getting a little concerned about what could have happened in his residence since they just came from a homicide scene nearby. So detectives hopped the gate and entered the property. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer again. However, they did see someone inside, but it would end up being Cato. They asked if OJ was home, and he said he wasn't sure, but to knock on the guest home where his daughter Arnell lived. They asked Cato if anything odd had happened that night, and he did say that around 10:45 p.m. that he was talking on the phone, and there were some loud thumps on his bedroom wall near the air conditioner. and the thumps were so loud that a picture on the wall moved, and he thought there was about to be an earthquake. So Furman went outside the house to look at the wall where the thumps would have come from, and there was a long, dark path with leaves, and then he saw a dark object on the ground. And when he was a little bit closer, he could tell that it was a glove, and there were no leaves or twigs on it, and it looked moist or sticky with like some of the parts sticking together, and he did think it looked similar to the glove at the Bundy scene. Meanwhile, the other detectives had spoken to Arnell, and she thought that he was likely in the main house, and detectives let her know that his Bronco was still there. So Arnell let them into the main house and called OJ's longtime secretary, Kathy Ronda, because she usually knew where OJ was. So Kathy said that OJ had taken the red-eye flight to Chicago the previous night and was staying at an airport hotel, the Chicago O'Hare Plaza. So Phillips called the hotel at 6:05 a.m. and asked to be put through to OJ's room. Phillips spoke to OJ and said, "I have some bad news for you. Your ex-wife, Nicole Simpson, has been killed." And OJ responded like, "Oh my God, Nicole's killed. Oh my God, she's dead." And Phillips then asked what to do with his children, and OJ said he would get on the next flight back to LA. Phillips did find it weird that OJ never asked how Nicole died, because Phillips did not say like it was a murder, it was an accident, just said she was dead, she'd been killed. That could mean a lot of things. That could be a
Mm-hmm.
car accident, that could be a murder, you know. But kind of weird that OJ didn't ask what happened. Police also notified Nicole's parents, Lou and Juditha Brown, and Nicole's sister Denise was also on the line, and she started screaming, "He killed her, he finally killed her." So that's where we're going to stop for part one. So
Mm-hmm.
tune in next week for part two to get more into the preliminary investigation and trial, or head on over to patreon.com/caffeinated crimes if you want to hear parts 2 and 3 immediately. If you are just in this story and cannot wait, come on over and join us.
Yes, yes, it's a lot. And so if you want it all at once, Patreon, but also understand if you need to take a week break between each because it's a lot.
Yes, definitely. And to speaking of a break, to give you a little something hopefully more uplifting to end the episode on, Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So, my perk of the week is that this weekend I got to go on a girls' trip to Atlanta. So, that was a lot of fun. We had a friend who lives down there, so we could kind of all carpool, go down there, hang out. And it was just such a nice weekend. It's so nice to have girls' time. Like, it's so fun. Like,
Yeah.
Friday, we ate our hearts out and then we went back to her apartment. We did like face masks and eye mask and we did a lip mask and I did not like the lip mask because it was a little suffocating.
Oh no.
A little suffocating there. But and it was just fun like talking and then like Saturday hanging out and walking around IKEA and a farmer's market and then like getting ready together like before going out, just kind of the camaraderie of all like doing our makeup and getting
Yeah.
dressed and it was just a lot of fun. It was a very good weekend and definitely needed after a lot of like stressful stuff. So it was just so nice to have a little girls' weekend. And then all of our significant others went golfing while we were gone.
Perfect.
So it was,
Yeah, it sounded like a good time, a nice little relaxing getaway.
yeah, it was very nice. So that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that last week my daughter started swim lessons and she is absolutely loving them. Just has the time of her life every single time. Like as soon as we get there, she just like sits on the side of the pool and just like giggles and is like hee and it's just like vibe. She's me. What can I say? She's me.
Yeah.
Like she's just it's really funny to watch, but she's very excited over it. She loves it. She's doing really well. She's just having a fantastic time. And it's just really nice to like see her like getting interested in something. And this is her first time like doing something with like an outside teacher, who's like not
Hmm.
us, who's like someone else like interacting with her on a regular basis. And she's like doing great with that. And so I'm feeling good about, her starting preschool here in a month and what that
Ooh,
transition is going to look
coming
like.
up close.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, so we've just been having a really good time with that, and she's just having a blast. So she's very sad every night when it's time to leave. So I'm sure when they're like over, it's gonna be a battle, but
Yeah, she's not going to be happy.
no, she's like, I want to do this forever. So, but yeah, that is my perk of the week. If you want to tell us about your perks of the week, if you want to send your thoughts on this case, but also maybe wait until we get through part three. Um, but if you want to share what you did or did not like about, this part, I mean, feel free. We're always here for
Hmm.
that. You can find us in all the places in the show notes. And again, it's patreon.com/caffeinated crimes if you want all of these parts immediately, as well as our bonus episodes and all kinds of other little fun goodies that we have over there for our little lovely Patreon family that we very much appreciate.
Yes, and if you could give us 5 stars on Apple, on Spotify, anywhere that you can that has like a rating system that you can give 5 stars to, that would be greatly appreciated. That helps us get like noticed more, hopefully more
Hmm.
listeners, all of that. Also we're on YouTube if you want to like and subscribe, leave a nice comment, anything like that. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.